Kind Earth Tech.
A taste of the future.
Very happy to see you here, Robert, and take it from here and explain us how you, as a cook and a guy from Mosa Meat, now know something that a lot of people don't know, and that is how beef fat actually tastes. Am I right, Robert?
Yeah, thank you so much for the kind introduction, and I'm honored to be here. I really appreciate the invite. What a great lineup of speakers. And I'm going to share my screen here. And hopefully that is in a full presentation mode. Great. So yes, I am super lucky that I have tasted the product of our beef fat, and it's what I wanted to talk about today. With this provocative title that fat is flavor. A quick introduction for myself. I'm excited to be one of the newer employees at Mosa Meat. I moved to the Netherlands in May, but I've been working with Mosa Meat since October. I have worked in politics in the United States for 20 plus years, but I'm also a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America in Napa, California. I'm very passionate about food. I'm passionate about sharing food and flavor development and the common ground that can be found over breaking bread. And I would not have worked for just any cultivated meat company. I was excited about coming to Mosa Meat because of the dedication to really developing a pure product, a product that is an actual replication of conventional beef in order to provide hardcore carnivores like myself an alternative. I'm also from Texas. I'm married into a cattle ranching family, and I've competed in barbecue competitions. So I probably have a little bit different profile than some of our audience or even some of our speakers. So let me talk a little bit about our fat, and let's see if I can advance the presentation here. Yep, great. So I think everybody knows, I won't spend a lot of time here. Our founders, Mark Post, Peter Verstrada, introduced the world to cultured meat and a cultured hamburger in 2013. It was really driven by, mission driven by the recognition that conventional meat has a lot of negative consequences for the planet, and that we needed a solution, and a solution for omnivores / carnivores that really were hard coded to crave meat. And so I think they would both recognize that the photo you see, the 2013 burger, it was revolutionary and sparked a space race towards this technology, but that original burger left a lot to be desired. And so the company has really been focused on advancing that original product ever since. And so we also recognize, in talking about hard-coded carnivores, that we have some challenges in shifting people's behavior. Consumer behavior, social behavior is a huge challenge. And while the plant-based movement has made incredible product developments, especially in the last 5 years, that people are beginning to try, there's still a percentage of the population that they are going to be meat eaters. And so it's probably not a realistic expectation to switch everyone to a plant-based diet in time to meet the challenges that we face in the climate crisis and biodiversity loss. And one of the things that we found in our consumer research and even in public research is that a lot of people will tell you, yes, they understand that the food system causes challenges. Yes, they know that meat, industrial agriculture in particular, and they will tell their friends they're flexitarians, but in reality, they are really not changing their behavior. They're still really eating meat 5, maybe even 7 days a week. And so we have a lot to do in terms of bridging what we call the chasm. And this is a common reference you've probably seen. It's a bell chart of the diffusion of innovation, right? And it's like a bell graph of consumer behavior in adopting a new product. And we know that early adopters and innovators, that's going to be an easier sell. Because they're more passion driven, mission driven. They already understand how their behavior impacts the world, and so it's a lower bar, right? But as you go from left to right on this, from innovators to laggards, you really have to win hearts and minds and mouths, right? And we know that the key is having a product that is at cost parity, that is a product that is affordable, but a product that tastes good. And one of the keys that was identified early on, that in order to reach a product that tastes good, is that we have to really replicate the sensory experience of meat. And so that's really why we're uncompromising about replacing beef with beef. And that means doing real meat tissue, and not just loose cells, but actually focusing on growing muscle and fat in order to get the real meat structure and taste, and not, compromising with a hybrid that has additional fillers, but actually focusing on pure muscle and fat to create that sensory experience. And so what is that sensory experience? Don did a great job before me of really laying this out and the science behind it. From a culinary perspective, I'll tell you that first 95% of it is smell, right? And we don't just have taste buds on our tongues. We have taste buds as early in our digestive system as our mouth, as all throughout, coating our cheeks, our tongue, our tonsils, down our throat, in our sinus cavity. So you have absorbed a lot of what you perceive as taste well before you've ever touched or even seen a product. And so we have to make sure that we are working to replicate that experience. And the second would be actually hearing a product, right? The next sense that you're likely to hear, the sizzle, and what Don described as the Maillard reaction, which is one of the most distinctive of cooking a beef. It's one of the most distinctive sounds in the culinary experience. And of course, then seeing the meat, not only cooking, but seeing it right before you put it in your mouth. And when we see a hamburger cooking or a steak cooking, we see that frenetic bubbling of the fat between the patty and the pan, and the clear dark brown caramelization on the surface, which is an indicator for us deep in our lizard brains. This meat is cooked, it's safe, and it's going to have that great flavor that we really adore. And of course, the next would be the texture of the meat. And so the texture, on a perfectly cooked hamburger, is going to have that slight crunch. It's going to have, from a well-executed sear, but beyond the crunch, it's going to have a tenderness and a little bit of springback from the meat that tells us this is cooked, but it's still tender. And then, of course, the bite, unlocks those juices. And the juice from meat is locked in by the sear. And so you bite into it, and the juice drains into your mouth, and the juice is packed with flavor. And of course, that's a big part of the sensory experience. And then, of course, what is really the final 5% is the taste, right? It's like we've already gone through this process, but we have this taste that's rich, it's meaty, it's umami flavor. And if done right, it really doesn't need any sauce or complements at all. So what we identified early on is that fat is critical to achieving all of that sensory experience. And fat has a lot of chemical role in those simple sensory experiences. Fat itself, a lot of the flavor, what we call flavor, and the odors in meat are actually lipid soluble and not water soluble. So they're trapped in these small bubbles of fat and they just burst out. And especially they're released with heat. And so when you're cooking bacon or you're cooking hamburger, literally there's that odor is sprung into the air as those bubbles burst. And that is what you smell, and immediately that becomes a huge part of the sensory experience and what you taste. And then, of course, seeing and hearing, fat plays a huge role in that. Fat is the liaison between the heat in the pan and the carbohydrates and the amino acids that Dan described that create the Maillard reaction. They're critical to that in transferring that heat evenly and creating that sizzle and the browning. And of course, the perception, not only perception of juiciness, that glossy meat that looks moist, but also in reality, trapping in moisture into the meat. And so, and finally, texture and taste. Fat, again, creates concentrated flavor, but it also serves as a transport for the salt and pepper and spices that you've put in the meat, and evenly spreads them and lubricates the muscle fibers to actually enhance that perception of tenderness and give the food a smooth texture. And it coats your mouth and your tongue as it goes down, which we all regularly call the mouth feel. That's why at Mosa Meat we have an entire team that's dedicated to fat. We literally call them the fat team. And this group of people, they're amazing. They're responsible for some incredible breakthroughs in optimizing not just flavor, but reducing the cost of growing the fat, which we've done by 65 times so far, which we just announced. And we're undergoing a full sensory review of the fat that they're growing, which I've been very lucky to participate in. And I'll tell you, I was blown away when I saw the product. But at a chemical level, what we found is that the fat is identical to conventional beef fat measured by the triglycerides. And on the right, you can see the list of fatty acids that were measured. And you see 2 samples of cultivated beef fat, 2 samples on the right of conventional beef fat, slaughtered beef fat, triglyceride levels almost identical, which tells us that we're getting almost there of exactly the chemical composition of the fat. And of course, with that comes the taste. And the taste really seals the deal. And again, I've tried it. It is extraordinary. As a chef, I would cook with it. I would use it on my potatoes, my carrots. I would use it for sauteing. It's incredible. And when recombined with the muscle in a hamburger, it is going to create the exact sensory experience that a conventional meat burger will, which I think is going to be critical to convincing people to change their behavior. And again, that's what we're here about, right? Is that we want to create a product that people will crave, that will have that Maillard reaction, the smell, the sizzle, the texture, the taste that they really crave, is a true analog to what they're used to, that they will switch to. And as a result, we achieve the planetary change that I think we are all here today that we agree on needs to happen. So I really appreciate the time to talk about beef fat today. I really could geek out on this forever, but I'll stop there and look forward to any conversations in the Q&A session.